investigative UFO news show where we dig into the biggest UFO headlines, the fight for disclosure, and the push for transparency. This isn't just a news show, it's a news discussion. We break down the stories, examine the possibilities, and explore the unanswered questions in search for the truth. No political spin, no biased narratives, just the facts, the analysis, and yes, the conversations that move the needle. I'm your host, Mr. Rob G, and it's time to dig in to the show. We're going to have an awesome show tonight. After what happened yesterday, we should be good to go today. And I want to make sure that everything is good out there. So, guys, let me know if everything is great. Let me know if everything is good as we go ahead and take a look at the comments here. Everything has been switched over. We should be good to go. We should be nice. Let me make sure that you guys can hear me out there before we get into it. This is about whistleblowers being exposed. We have actually, okay, Tim James, are we sounding good out there? Are we looking good? Let me know. If you can hear me, let me know. Okay, good, good. All right, great. So appreciate everybody coming on in. Whistleblowers exposed. So as we were going to do before, we actually looked at the fact that there was recently something that I came across my line. I was on watching YouTube as I usually do. Came across a Julian Dory podcast, which actually we're gonna kind of react to the audio for that. I didn't take the video, just the audio. Shout out to Julian Dory, and he has a lot of subscribers over there. Make sure you guys go subscribe. I also put the link for this video in the chat or in the description of my video here, so you can go ahead and click that link at any time. You'll be able to go see the video in full. But he talked about some interesting things. You know, recently we had a show where we talked about whistleblowers and NDAs and the whole fact of the, skeptics that are out there that will look at a whistleblower, every whistleblower that comes out, and says, oh, there hasn't been one single whistleblower that has come out that a skeptic has said, you know what, let's consider it, let's think about it, let's let's open our mind to maybe what they're saying is potentially real. So, what I'm going to say is that nothing is 100%. And even with us on our side of this, when we look at whistleblowers, we can't take 100% at face value. And I think that's the moral of that story. So we're going to go ahead and kind of try to jump right on into what it is that we're looking at here and get us over to the slideshow. All right. So let me go ahead and do a couple things first here. We want to go ahead and make sure that we want to make sure that we are looking at the slides here and they should be okay. There we go. The phone number, the DIGG, 856-843-3444. That's 856 the DIGG. Outside the United States at 001-856-843-3444 or 001-856 the DIGG. Also, want to say what's up to the members out there. Ann Joanne, the Beekeeper, D. Nunley, Maggie M10, Flat 6, Miss Catherine Jones, Cosmic Joe Chronicles, Wes W. Decker, Steel Pooh 69, Polly Rotterman, Lil Camp 51, Frankie B, and Fast Timmy. And yeah, we're going to definitely make sure that we go ahead and get right into the show. It's not going to be too long because I want to make sure that we listen to the audio and then go ahead and sit down and discuss what it is that we heard. So, Julian Dory, who's the guy you see right there on the left, obviously in the middle is Jason Sands and a depiction of the extraterrestrial that he stated he was driving down the road on the Nellis test range and saw this, what he thought was a soldier in army fatigues, kind of looking exasperated and maybe even potentially hypothermic as he pulled up on this thing, realized it didn't have ears. It had a blue tint to its skin, and it was an extraterrestrial, right? So, Jason Sands, as we know, came out on Twitter Spaces rather than the traditional route that whistleblowers take when they come out and break a story or blow the whistle, rather. So it was a little weird, right? It was a little weird. And I think, when we look at people within our field, we want to make sure, especially with this topic, and to have that validity, have the to be taken seriously out there on the national level, on the global level, then we have to make sure that the people that are coming out to represent, what it is that we're experiencing, are vetted and authentic in what it is that they say. And we did a great show on whistleblowers and the NDAs, because what I want to say about that is, as we know, as far as whistleblowers and NDAs go, we talked about, you know, because a whistleblower can come out and give information and say, oh, well, I can't say any more than that because of NDA. We looked at it more as, okay, is the NDA more of a restrictive thing where a whistleblower wants to say more but really can't because of the limitations of an NDA? Or will you have occasionally some quote unquote whistleblowers come out and hide behind that fact that NDAs is so restrictive, which means, hey, don't ask me too many questions because I really can't talk about it because, as you know, NDAs are very restrictive. And that was one of the things. That's the reason why we did the other show. I'm going to link that show also in the description here, because I think, after we talk about this, if you haven't seen the show we did on that, it would be a good watch as far as, understanding where we're coming from with this, because, you want to take everyone at face value, right? That's how you would like to do. But the downside to that is, in this field, that's where the notion that you found people within the UFO community are just believers, because they just take everything at face value. They're not being critical of, the things that are being said or brought to the table. And that's why we did that show, because I think we should be more critical within our community as far as what's being brought forward. And we shouldn't take everything at face value, right? I think there should be a level of skepticism within our community. And I know that for a fact that there has definitely been people within the community who have said, yeah, I don't really know about that particular whistleblower. I don't know about this one. Well, Darcy Weir, who I had the pleasure of interviewing, and you can catch that on Spaced Out Radio. I interviewed Darcy Weir about his documentary, but I was kind of shocked and kind of pleasantly surprised, though, to hear what the way that he was approaching uh, the vetting process, right, for himself. Now, now this is Julian Dory's headline, which says Jason Sands is lying to you. I don't know that necessarily that's the full message that was given, and I don't think Darcy Weir obviously had anything to do with that being the title of the video. But the angles that he's taking, at the very least, he's saying, hey, maybe you should step back and think about some of the things that are being said here. And I think that's cool. I think that's okay. And I think there should be more of that within the field, because, as you'll hear in the audio, they talk about people like Corey Good in the 20 and back, and just and point to evidence that shows that this person may have actually embellished everything that they said. And so, as a community, we there are actual experiencers like myself, like a lot of you out there, that actually have had things happen, or we have actually witnessed or seen things that can't be explained. We have to find a way to separate ourselves from the people who are just making things up. Because yes, people are out there making things up, as wild as that sounds, that someone would find any interest or find a need in making things up. But I guess that's where the whole grifting angle comes in, right? And why people will point to, skeptics a lot of the time, and I don't blame them for it, will point to people within the community and say, hey, that person's grifting, that person's not being genuine in their approach to the topic. They don't really have an interest in getting to the truth. They're just making up stories in order to make a dime, right? And that's why I'm okay with it. There are some skeptics out there that are pretty critical of a certain group of people within the UFO community. I won't say any names, because just for to keep it on the up and up. But I'm sure a lot of you know who some of the people in our community are, who are actually making things up or just not really being straightforward 100%, right? And I think there's an issue there. Let me go ahead and get into what it was that was said because I think this is interesting. I may jump in occasionally to make a point here, but I want to just run the audio. Once again, this is a conversation between Julian Dory and Darcy Weir about Corey Good, Jason Sands, and even Paul Benowitz is brought up. Rick Doty, who I had also the pleasure of interviewing, is also brought up in this conversation. So we'll play it, we'll talk about it, and go from there. So kick back, get some popcorn, don't go anywhere. We're gonna jump right on into it right now.
Really deep conspiracy theory stuff. And everybody that's creating message groups and interacting with each other are just going rabbit hole deep on like underground bases, secret space programs, um, remote viewing and psychic abilities. And the guy who set up that website, his name is Bill Ryan. He started up an earlier site that was very similar called Project Camelot with Carrie Cassidy. And he saw Corey Good starting to announce himself as this secret space program, super soldier dude on the forums. And he starts tracking all of this guy's IP address because every time you log into the site, you have a certain IP. He starts tracking that Corey Good was going to all those hot topics and he's mining all of these popular themes, all these popular conspiracy UFO ideas, and he's putting them into one character that he's launching on the forum because they track that IP going to underground bases. They track that IP going to secret space program. They track that IP going to, child soldier psychic stuff, right? And early on, Bill Ryan launched an essay on the forum and said, hey, I don't believe this guy because I've been watching his activity on my forum, blah, 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 blah. He seems to be like creating this story off of things that are already existing.
Okay, so now I'll stop it right there real quick because obviously everyone knows the Corey Good story, and then with the 20 and back, and you're just hearing the details that I was even unaware of, right? Bill Ryan apparently, as you heard, was the owner of this website. Corey Good was a member of this site, and he would track his IP address, Corey Good's IP address, coming into the site, kind of researching all these different niche areas and topics. And then what ended up happening, as he's saying here, is that he ended up formulating this whole story, right? This whole story about super soldiers 20 and back, and which you'll find out later. And I was totally unaware as well how this all really played out. I knew about the story, but not the details. And so it's pretty interesting. Let's jump back into it.
And long story short with that, Corey Good had already blown up and become super popular. Everybody in the community was believing him and getting behind him.
They wanted to believe.
They wanted to believe, and that's the thing. Like, we want to believe all this stuff. I want to believe that there's a galactic federation out there, but there's absolutely no friggin' proof, right? We
Zero.
do know that there's UFOs, but are those being piloted by, reptiles or Arcturians or, the Ebens from Sirius B or whatever? I don't know.
And that's fair. That's fair for someone to say, right? That's a fair perspective for someone within the community to make a statement like that. I know that UFOs are real. I know that things are out there, but when you have, and I've always had this problem, when you have individuals that are able to give details that no one else knows, right? And we know one of the big things in this community is no one knows everything. There's not a single person out here. You can't point to me one person that knows everything. And you have a lot of people sometimes that talk so matter of fact about all these fine details of things that most of us are still trying to find out. and it's always, I feel like, something that definitely raises a flag for me. Because there should be more. I feel like there should be more of a stance of, I'm not sure what they are, or but when you're given details of, hey, they're from this place, they're from this particular star system, they're from X, Y, and Z. This is what they're called, and I don't know that anyone has that much information on what it is that we're dealing with. I mean, being truthful, right? Just being truthful, because I figure if that's the case, then the puzzle should already be solved. We should already know everything about what's going on if you have individuals out there who speak so matter of fact on the subject. So we'll jump back into this here.
Like, we need proof of that.
Yes.
The claims that go that far are the dangerous claims that everybody get absorbed in the UFO community and become believers, right? They don't become skeptics of these things. And so you see that happening with Jason Sands right now, because he's essentially saying all of these things that I've seen already in the community. For example, the whole idea of intercepting communications between alien intelligence off base and personnel on base, like generals or commanders or whatever you got at the Nellis Air Force Base. That is basically Paul Benowitz. He was intercepting signals. If you read Project Beta and you go down this whole Rick Doty rabbit hole, Rick Doty was sent out to intercept Paul Benowitz, who ran his own commercial, like, private airport in Nevada, which is close to Kirkland Air Force Base. He started intercepting signals, and he believed that it was alien communications with a base somewhere out there. And it eventually, they point him towards the Archuleta Mesa in Dulce, New Mexico. And that's how the whole Dulce, New Mexico underground base story started, right? Because of Paul Benowitz.
Mm.
And he was getting that information from an Air Force OSI agent, Rick Doty, who said, this is where the signals are coming from.
Yeah.
That could have been counterintelligence. That could have been Rick being like told, go intercept this guy who has received these signals and tell him it's here instead of Kirkland Air Force Base. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So we've heard that story already. Jason has built that into his backstory. Then,
when did he first do that? Was that all the way back on that first space, or did that come later?
He said that on that first space.
Okay, and this is
with
in April
2024. So,
And real quick, right there, the way that he's processing this data, the way he's processing this information, I don't know if you realize any of the things that he's saying here, but if you fact check this, then a lot of the stuff he's saying ends up being true. And that goes back to what we were talking about on the Whistleblowers NDA show, that an NDA, like, if we need whistleblowers to be able to come out and tell everything they can up until they hit that line of, not crossing the restrictions of the NDA, right? But telling everything else, everything that they can tell about what it is that they know or they encountered or experienced. But you find when you ask questions to some of the whistleblowers, they kind of hold back or pretty vague or pretty gray about their responses. And I thought that this was important because, the Whistleblower NDA show, the reason why I did it is because I had recently watched a Jason Sands interview, right? It was, I believe he was on Spaced Out Radio. And there were just, I felt truths. But then I also felt a level of, this doesn't make sense, or maybe a level of what may be perceived as deception, right? And this, for me, when I hear Darcy break it down in this way, it kind of confirms some of the things that I was feeling, right? So, not to say that this man is sitting up here just blatantly lying about what he had gone through or what his experience was, but I think having the shield of an NDA allows you to be, maybe you were a person in a particular program or had access to a particular program, but then if you did, okay, that can be validated, but the thing that can't be validated are the experiences or stories that end up being told when you're on a stage, right? And using our senses that we have as human beings, we have the ability to detect deception and things of that nature. We're able to kind of detect that on our own. And for me, when I watched this interview or heard this here, Darcy kind of just validated just some of the things I was feeling, right? So we'll continue.
I'm like, what the like, is no one seeing this add up, like connecting to these other conspiracy popular theories? The other thing is, we have that popular UFO video from, I think it's 1992, the Nellis Air
Yes.
Force Base
Yes.
UFO. It's a
Yes.
FLIR camera video. This thing looks really odd. That's been out there for a long time.
Yes.
There's no backstory to that. There's no amazing, sensational thing you can say about it. It's just a really interesting UFO video. And this guy comes forward and basically claims it in James Fox's documentary. He says, well, I actually saw it land
Yes.
and saw a blue alien come out of it.
Wait, hold on. Back up 1 second. I think he's the actual sighting that from 92 or 90, I think it was 93, whatever it was, the same thing.
Well,
That was a separate thing from the actual blue alien story. The blue alien story was that he was in the desert out there, and he in a caravan of, I think, 3 other cars. Everyone run episode 267, see if
Yeah.
it was 3 or 4. And they came upon this blue alien who was coming from a craft that had some damage. He wasn't saying that, as far as I know, that was the same craft.
looking for tritium or something. to power-
tritium or-
Tritium,
yeah.
yeah. I mean,
Okay, fair, very fair. And that's why sitting down with the group of individuals to have the conversation, that was fair. Julian jumped in and said, hey, well, actually, I don't think he was talking about that. He actually was talking about when he was on the range and he drove up on the bean, and that's when he saw the bean. So Darcy may not be correct on that angle there. And that's why we have these conversations. Here we go.
what I'm saying is, it's glomming on to an already
Yes.
recognized UFO or UAP video that we all have seen in the community and adding a story on top of it that's sensational that we can't actually prove. We can't, right?
We can't. Yes, that's right.
So, maybe you could say, okay, this guy's telling the truth about that, but he's telling the truth about 20 and back, which we know is
Bullshit,
factually
yeah.
untrue. You saw the doc series. Corey Good admitted in a deposition, a court deposition,
Oh, that was amazing.
where you're not allowed to lie under oath in a court proceeding. He says when he's presented by the lawyer, I think it's Lyndon, who was representing Leon Isaac Kennedy, African-American Hollywood actor that got pulled into this legal
Mm-hmm.
battle thing. And we'll talk about the whole legal battle stuff
Yeah.
because that's still going on today.
Yeah.
And I hope that this doesn't become a legal battle with me in the Sands camp. But you basically have that lawyer saying, so did you actually go to space and fight aliens and serve in this 20 and back thing?
This was incredible.
And Corey says, what do you mean? Physically? And he says, yeah, did you go into space? Because Corey had spent like the past pretty much 20 years, or 10 years, sorry, with regards to the Gaia character and, all of these documentaries he did post leaving Gaia with David Wilcock saying, yeah, I'm the real deal. I'm a secret space astronaut. and a super soldier, which he looks like none of those, right? Like, I don't, if you believe I'm a secret space astronaut or super soldier, good luck, right? Like, I'm dead in both scenarios pretty quickly. So then he admits, okay, I never went physically. It was part of my meditative process.
Oh, it was worse than that, dude. Remember the quote he says? You have it in the. It's incredible.
Say it.
He goes, I don't even have the exact one, but I have the word he used. He goes, "That was my delusional truth. It was a part of my delusion." And the lawyer had to ask him like 2 or 3 times to clarify that. Okay, so as a delusion, therefore, that is not something that physically happened. He goes, it happened in a spiritual. It's like
in my
what the
meditative,
fuck?
like an out of body meditative process.
That was
But
incredible.
that is not what he was selling all those
That's right.
those years before. He was
Okay, let me stop it there because if we could depose, like if some of the people that we feel like may be embellishing, if they could be deposed, right? Would it end up the same way? Would it end up with that individual admitting in the end, yeah, I wasn't telling really the full truth on that? I mean, because obviously, it's a stain. It's definitely a black eye on the community. It is something that doesn't help us get taken any more serious than we understand this thing is, right? How do you vet these people, right? I guess just using discernment and judgment and some people want to kind of pass off the idea that no one should be challenged on the things that they say. They should just be taken at face value. I can't fully 100%. I can agree with everyone's experience should be taken that way, but it doesn't mean that you take it to the bank, right? You still put it up on the wall. You still go through a vetting process after the fact. You don't have to challenge right in the moment. You can take time and as it appears Darcy has by listing these different things that kind of point to the fact that maybe what is being told isn't true. You listen to the story initially, it's like okay. Then a little bit later, you go ahead and you attempt to try to break it down and say, okay, hey, well, this doesn't make sense. Now, I applaud skeptics. Some skeptics out there are doing that sort of work. But then when we don't do it within the community, that is also a stain on ufology because it looks like we just accept anything that's being said. And I don't, and obviously with Corey Good's example and other examples as well, it definitely shows that we should not be doing that. So let's go ahead and we're almost done here.
I did this.
He was saying it was physical.
Yes.
Like I was an astronaut like Buzz Aldrin or, these real Air Force pilots that risked their lives to go into, a no gravity environment and go to the moon and such. Like this guy is LARPing.
Yes.
He's live action role playing. And so I'm seeing these parallels in the Jason Sands story because I asked him in that premiere space, have you ever heard of an underground base or been to an underground base? And he said, oh yeah, I've been in an underground base facility.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, wow. Okay. The very first documentary I ever made was about Phil Schneider, about a guy who claimed he was in an underground base and he lost his fingers from getting into a battle with aliens.
Yeah.
Post documentary, the program coming out.
Unless he's like, I don't have enough weed.
Yeah. Jason Sands says in a space that he was sent in a crack squad unit to go into a cave, which is exactly what Phil Schneider said he was doing, going into a cave underground. And Jason says he was hired to whack 8-foot tall crab aliens.
Yeah, I believe he said this on Post Disclosure podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah, December 18th. Yeah.
So I'm like, that's Phil Schneider.
Yeah.
right?
You're like this whole time, especially because you're working on this Corey Good documentary in Gaia and seeing how he LARPed and pulled all these things together. This whole time, you're like the Leo meme where you're like, wait a minute, I know that. That's, yeah, that's it.
Right? But I'm like, people don't listen to me. I say this stuff like in spaces, and I'm doing like this weekly KGRA radio show
KGRA.
every Wednesday. It's just web radio. They asked me to have this, and I figured out a way. I was like, okay, why don't we bring Twitter Spaces into the radio feed, and then you can also save that as like a podcast on Spotify and Spreaker and all that stuff. So I had Jason Sands in it.
When was this?
He was in about 4 weeks ago, and this is after he started talking about whacking the 8-foot tall crab aliens. And I'm like, dude, just speak to him. Look, he's a really nice guy. I think he's a good person deep down. I don't think he wants to hurt anybody. But, if you believe in this like MAGA movement, Make America Great Again, I believe when you're in the UFO community and you're believing these sensational stories, you are making America dumb again.
Mm.
And so
I got you.
I'm talking to this guy and I'm like, dude, how can you prove, like, you're saying you're killing aliens now? That just doesn't, like, when was this? How did it happen? And it gets very blurry and wishy-washy. And he announces in that space, and my friend Andy, who could not be here with us
Shout
today.
out Andy. He was here last time. Andy Marshall.
Andy Marshall, good guy. He's a little pissed off at me right now.
Why is he pissed off at you? How could he ever be pissed off at you?
I slept past a phone call that he was supposed to arrive today, and I woke up to being called punk bitch. But it's all good. It's great. I've been called worse. And I love the guy. He's a good guy. He means well.
Hey, listen, he's a New Yorker, I'm a New Jerseyer. That's how we talk sometimes.
Yeah,
Don't take it personal.
Long Islander, probably even more intense. But
Yes.
anyways, so he, was in this space, and he was also like, Andy is an experiencer. I do not discount people have had real experiences with either UFOs or maybe.
All right. So once again, there were some interesting things being pointed out there, right? When you get into stories of, fighting and killing 8-foot extraterrestrials, why is that as far as the story can go? It should be able to go further than that, right? We should be able to point out where these bases are. It just, if this ends up falling, and I don't know if that's going to be definitive enough to say, okay, Jason Sands is a liar, but it just has to at least give you, a moment of pause to really think about what it was that Darcy was pointing out. Okay, yeah, that does sound similar to this other UFO story. That does sound like maybe that was taken from that. And there have been other people in the community, because I've seen the comments when you guys are commenting out there, and you have pointed out things that I didn't even think about, where you pointed out, hey, that sounds like Billy Myers, or that sounds like Whitley Strieber's Communion. That encounter there sounds like that. And I think there's a lot of that going on. I don't know why people do this, right? But these are the people that usually get that spotlight and the shine, the ones that are the ones embellishing the stories. Perfect example, going back to Corey Good, right? So it's just a problem, right? And it's something we should be vetting out ourselves. It's something we should be, if you see it, call it out. Don't be afraid to call it out. Don't feel like, don't feel like you are discrediting someone if you can point to something that is likely not the truth, right? You can't just depend on the skeptics to do it because they will do it. I can point to a few that are currently doing exactly that. But then sometimes they take it a little too far because their idea is okay. If we caught this person in a lie, that means everyone is lying, right? And we know that's not the truth. We know that there are definitely most people who have come out and talked about experiences have really actually had an experience. And I just think that that takes away from, when we look at it on the flip side, if we catch someone lying, right, or embellishing, how should we handle it? What should we do about that? Shouldn't we be more cautious going forward then, right? Because I don't know how we will be able to separate the embellishers from the truth tellers, aside from attempting to sniff things out. But the thing is that as it stands, when we, wonder why we're not being taken seriously on a national level or why we can't book these, a spot on a huge show to tell our story, this ends up being the reason why, because of individuals that come out and make things up, right? And if you're able to make something, and here's really what I think it is, you know, like my experience. I think my experience should be something that should be shown and talked about on a way larger stage. I really do. But the problem is that it's an authentic experience. So there aren't any extra details to kind of put it over the top, right? And I'll never be a person that embellishes or makes up anything. Anything that I've bring to you guys is something that actually happened, and I always attempt to bring receipts if they're there, right? But if I took my UFO story with the 47 objects and said, yeah, they did this, and then they shut my camera off and I couldn't record anymore, and when I did that, they landed and they all got out and they did all this stuff, and so if I was an embellisher, I could make my experience sound so much more intriguing that it probably would get a spotlight somewhere, right? But it's not the right thing to do. And is that what some people are doing? Are they just feeling like, okay, my story isn't getting enough attention at face value? The actual experience that I had is not getting enough attention. So let me go ahead and throw all this other fantastical stuff on top of it, right? And then once you start going down that path, all of a sudden you have this maybe 2% true story that has now 98% of things that you've added to it to kind of sensationalize it. And I think that is kind of what we're experiencing in this whole whistleblower thing. I mean, I can point and we, like I said, if you haven't watched the show we did, it was about a month ago on this channel here. It's called Whistleblowers and NDAs. Go back and watch that because we kind of break it down on you know what what we should be expecting from whistleblowers to at least push it to the line, come with actual information that's going to help move this instead of feeling like left out of the spotlight and feeling like you need to embellish or make something up to add to your story. Um, that's why when Lou Elizondo talked about blowing up ufology years ago, and people always remember this is what he was talking about. Separating from like the Corey Good stories that are fiction, right? Separating from stories that are 98% embellishment, right? Like making that its own category. Technically, it has its own category. It's called science fiction. That's literally what people who are making up stories are presenting. They're presenting science fiction, things that did not occur, things that they created, a story that they created on their own for whatever reason, right? So it is different than someone having a real experience that can really attest to something, right? Like my objects, the shadow person I took picture of, none of that stuff is embellished. All that stuff is real, right? And maybe it doesn't have the sensational element to put it over the top, but it is data. It is data that you can use to weigh up against things that you may go through or sightings that you may have. That's what this is all about. Taking the data as it is and allowing others to process that data and then use that now historical data to weigh against something they may run into tomorrow or they may run into next week. That's what this is supposed to be all about. So anytime we have a skeptic that points out like a grifter in our community or someone who is just blatantly not telling the truth, even though I'm in the community, I applaud it. I applaud it. And I just think it should happen more often than not. And like I said, skeptics are on the outside looking in, so they don't have that thing in front of them that says, well, it could be telling the truth. They're blatantly calling things out as they see it, right? Sometimes they go overboard, but in most cases, they're calling it like they see it. And we just have to adopt more of that within the community. We can't just automatically have a whistleblower come out and not challenge some of the things that are being said, right? Because they could literally be pulling your leg, as has been witnessed and done already in this community a million times already, right? So I'd like to know how you guys feel about it. I know the Corey Good situation. I know how a lot of people, from what I've heard, feel about that. You kind of disassociate anything that he said or done from the experience. At least most of the people I talk to have taken that route when it comes to Corey Good. But let's go back to the basics. Let's rewind everything. Let's go back to the basics, the things that we know. We know that there are these craft in the sky that are coming in from outer space. They've been witnessed coming in from outer space. So we know that. We have situations where, like the one I always like to point to, Ariel School, other mass sightings, the Westall 66, Westall School, and Brookhaven, right? School sightings where a lot of people were there to see what happened. So we know the craft are coming in from outer space. We've seen them. We've seen them in the sky doing weird things that craft that were made here can't do. We've seen that. We know that's a fact. Based on what we've been told by these children at these schools, these craft land on the ground. So we know that they do that. Lonnie Zamora has also said that. He's also cataloged the data on that too. I'm so glad that he did that. We have situations where beings get out of these craft, as has been shown. So let's take the basics there. We know that if they're landing on the ground, it's possible that they're walking around the ground as well, right? We know that that's a possible or very likely with all the other data that we already have. But we can take that to the bank, right? You can look at the Kentucky Goblin story and know that not only are they getting out and walking around, but they have attempted to enter homes at some time. So we know that that's the case. We know in some cases they have entered homes, right? And they have went as far as taking individuals. So these are the things that we know, the things we can take to the bank that we know are happening. But when we get into the extra, I had a fight with these things, I killed one, and so when we get into all that stuff, that's the stuff we don't know. That's the stuff that we can't take to the bank at this point. We can't take it to the bank because we don't have anything to show us that this is what has taken place. And on the face of it, it sounds fantastical that you, a human being, would be able to interface and then unalive a group of advanced beings, right? Let's take what we know and let's go back to the basics, right? Let's when we hear these stories, what about that story lines up with this historical data that we know is true? That's how we should be approaching all these stories that come out. And I think that might be, one of the tools or one of the things that helps us differentiate with who's just saying some stuff versus, who's actually potentially telling the real truth about what it is that they're saying, right? Wouldn't you hate to be behind? And I'll say this. To me, there are definitely some whistleblowers, most whistleblowers, I'll say, that I have heard seem to be giving information that lines up with historical data, which for me makes it more realistic and authentic in what it is they're saying. They're not adding any extra spin on top, but it's the ones that come out that have these elaborate, fantastical stories. And I'll point to the Jason Sands. One of the things for me, and I don't know how you guys all feel about it, but one of the things for me that just is strange to me, and it could be true, and I'll just leave this on the board, until it's vetted otherwise to say that it's not true. But why would there be an extraterrestrial in army fatigues on a test range? Why would there be an extraterrestrial in army fatigues? Why would they be wearing our military gear? It doesn't hold up. I mean, it doesn't for me. Where does that align with any historical facts that we have out there, right? Underground bases, yeah, I can see that. They have bunkers. We have all sorts of military things that are underground. Missile silos. That's factual. So we know that. So you talk to me about military bases underground. Yeah, I could definitely see that. We have examples of it currently, right? So I think if we kind of bring it down a notch, take out all the sensationalistic uh information, right? That's been added to it. Another thing that always kind of gets me is when someone will say that the extraterrestrials told them that they were from a particular star system. These star systems don't have names until we name them, right? They may have names to the extraterrestrials, but they likely won't be the same names that we've given these star systems. So how is it that the extraterrestrial will refer to their star system in a term that we've created as human beings? And there's other little things like that, right? There's other little things that doesn't necessarily say, "Oh, that's a lie," but it's just like, "Hey, wait a minute. Let's talk about that for a minute, right? Let's kind of talk that through." And I just think we need to have more of that going on because I know a lot of people will sit back and just listen to a story and be like, "Oh, wow, that sounds interesting. Wow. Oh, wow, that from that place. Oh, wow." No pushback. No, taking a moment to be like, I don't know. And I think people think that, you know, taking things at face value is the right thing to do, and because you don't want to make that person feel any kind of way, right? Now you don't have to in their face say, "Hey, you're lying," but you can actually take the data afterwards, take it offline, and kind of look at it again and say, okay, let me look at historical times where this may have occurred. Oh, wow, okay, there are a lot of people that say that. Or, man, I just can't find anyone else who has said anything like that. Like, where does this idea come from? Why is it that this is the only person that I've ever heard have an experience that has said this? Like, doing a lot of that. I just think that that's what we should be doing, because otherwise we leave the door wide open for people who embellish and make up stories to just bring a story to you and tell their story that isn't a true one, right? We got to if we want this subject to be taken more seriously, I think we have to be more serious about the how we vet the information. I think we have to approach it in a more serious manner, right? It doesn't have to be science and science is the way. It doesn't have to be any of that. It's just using the senses you have as a human being that you were born with to kind of discern and differentiate and vet and kind of go through those processes, the smell test, all those things, right? And like I said, you don't have to disrespect and do this in someone's face. Allow them to tell their story, but don't just let it go, right? That's the only way. And that, once again, that goes back to Lou Elizondo and why he said we should blow up ufology. It had nothing to do with you or me who have had these authentic experiences. It has to do with those individuals that are overshadowing our real experiences with these fantastical, sensational experiences that if you were to vet, you may come to a conclusion that are likely not true. And we really can't have that, coming from our whistleblowers, because these are the people that immediately will get the national spotlight. And if you have a few news cycles that go through with someone who's supposed to be taken 100% serious, because that's one of the things we say too, look at their credentials, look at who they are, look at what they've done, right? And so we're kind of backing these people immediately, saying, "Hey, they're these stand-up individuals," right? But at the same time, it's as you see, for some reason, some people feel like they have to add things to their story or do things like that to put it over the top. So I just think we should take a step back, just kind of vet, get back to the basics, the things that we know, the historical things that we can lean on, you know, compare those things to the new stories that are being told, see what makes sense and what doesn't make sense. Common sense, as I always say, is a superpower that we have. One of our superpowers, common sense, right? Let's use it. Let's use it. Right? So this is obviously not to say that Jason Sands is not telling the truth, but as I said earlier, Darcy Weir, and shout out to Julian Dory's podcast, because we used obviously audio from that today to kind of have this conversation. But and shout out to Darcy Weir for being exactly what I'm trying to say we should all try to be, which is, you know, obviously an experiencer and a believer on some level, but let's still use discernment and still go through a vetting process when you know when approaching some of these new stories, regardless who they come from. Because if we don't do that, if Darcy Weir doesn't sit out there and do that and take that, just like I said, he hopes he doesn't get any backlash from the Sands camp. I would hope not. I would hope that doesn't happen. But you shouldn't worry about anything like that if you're calling something out that you have evidence to kind of back it up. And we just need more people like that. So shout out to Darcy Weir for even taking a risk like that and standing out on a big stage like Julian Dory's podcast and making those sorts of claims and statements. I know a lot of people have had these thoughts in the back of their mind because I've seen chats and things of that nature where people are saying exactly the same thing essentially that Darcy came out and said, but to go out there and put a stamp on it and have it out there for the world to see, I think more of that should happen because we should be separating ourselves from people who have not actually, who are out here telling stories and not talking about experiences. So that's what I wanted to do here. It was an OMG moment for me when I saw it, and it was just like, it aligned with the Whistleblowers and NDA show that we just sat here and did a few weeks back, maybe a month ago. Once again, that's a good show for you guys to go back and watch. If you want to watch this, the actual video for the Julian Dory podcast and what they sat there and talked about, I'm sure they talked about a lot more than this, but the link is in the description of this video. So shout out to them for that. And outside of that, I don't know. What do you guys think, man? How do you feel about it? I know some people have some opinions on Jason Sands because I've seen some of you at times bring it up. So let me see. Let me just see if anyone is commenting on that at all. Gray Owl. I think Darcy goes a bit too vigilante justice on this vibe he's on. He's rolling in anyone who he deems to have made claims outside of his nuts and bolts. And Gray Owl is also saying, understanding of spacemen arriving from planets in a metallic disk, it gets weirder than that. No, and it does get weirder than that. And that's not to say, yeah, I mean, there are definitely some very weird elements and aspects to this, but these things aren't one-off experiences, right? So that's why you lean on historical data because you'll find, as weird as something may sound, you'll find in the historical data that something like this has occurred. It has been on record many times throughout history, right? Throughout the reports that we have gathered. So yeah, I mean, definitely things get weird and you shouldn't just discount something because it sounds weird. No, because, like I said, with my sighting, 47 objects, my sighting was still weird, but it isn't sensational enough, to be out there on the main stage. And I think that's the difference. Weird versus sensational is I think kind of the difference that we're looking at here. Let's see. Maggie M10 was saying, seems to me some people put a sprinkle of truth in with the heap of lies. Have to be careful not to throw the baby out with the bathwater, in my honest opinion. Right, right. And the lesson to those who have added this, this sensationalism to their story is your regular normal story is just fine. Don't feel like you have to add some things that aren't true to your true story. That's the lesson for those people out there that are doing it, because there are some people who have had maybe a small experience, but it's not getting a lot of attention. So they add a lot of things to it that aren't true. Those people, you don't have to add anything to it. Your small experience or something you may have think is insignificant is still important. Every experience counts. Every experience should be cataloged and put on the board, but just don't feel like you need to add, or don't take that step to add in things that didn't actually occur, because that actually is hurting the cause. And if you've had an experience, you want answers. So you adding things to your story or making it over sensational does not help get those answers. It actually clouds up or muddies up the waters. So for those people, and I'm glad you said that, Maggie, because there definitely is a difference. There are people who are completely making up stories, completely, and then there are people who have had an experience that they may feel is not significant enough to get attention, so they add things to the story. So once again, the people who are just blatantly making things up, just stop it, right? The people who are adding things to their experience, don't do it. You don't have to. Your experience, regardless how you feel about it, is still important, and it should be put up on, because even though, so you just saw a bright light flash through your car, right? That's your experience. So that's very important, because when I was 9, I had this bright light flash in my car. At the time, did I think anything of it? No. But if you add that experience to the data, then now I see that and I'm like, wow, I had the same thing. So you may think that that's insignificant, but it's very significant to the overall and getting answers to the questions. And that's why it's so important to just not add the extra. Just tell your story. Tell what happened to you. Be truthful. Be 100% truthful, authentic. That's what helps us get to where we need to go. That was an awesome comment, Maggie. Thanks for that. Let's see. See, Gray Owl is saying here. It seems to me that bumping into X-ray operators is highly unusual and relative to the individual. It may not be something that could be consumed in a general consensus type of way. Okay. See, Magneticus saying rockets to the moon was science fiction. Yeah. At one point it was, yeah. Gray Owl seems more to be the case that those who bump in X-rays withhold the craziest details because they don't even make sense to the observer whom had the experience. Yeah. I mean, and that's the thing. As weird as it may be, tell your experience. Even if it sounds weird, tell your experience. Just don't add to it. Don't add to it. Hillbilly Herb, the guy in the video up above Darcy Weir does a great expose on Corey Good. Yeah, and I think they said in that talk there that I guess Darcy is actually doing something on Corey Good right now. I mean, and it's like I said, it's just an example of someone who took other stories, other people's stories, and kind of made it their own, and that's ridiculous. Like, just go outside, you'll have an experience. Go outside, look up. Go outside and look up. If you do it enough, you will have your own experience. There was no need to make one up or to take over others' experiences. You'll be okay. All right, let me go ahead and move it up here. All right, Gray Al, great question. Romeo Gamma, aka Rob G. I don't know, bruh. Who are we to decide what is too crazy? I'm not defending Sands or anyone else, but I don't personally base my analysis on whether contact account makes sense. So, and this is, you may have put this in before I made that other statement, but um it's not really to decide what's crazy, because as we talked about, there are definitely weird things that happen within these encounters. But at the same time, if you are if there is something that can be pointed out that isn't true, it should be done. So obviously you're not going to be able to do that in the moment unless you have this vast database of knowledge in your head to kind of weigh things against. But if you have gone through some things and you can see, okay, this person got this from that, right? This is this person's story. This person is retelling that person's story. then it's at least something to raise a flag, right? And then you should be able to talk about that. And then the person that had the experience should be able to talk back to it. Like Jason Sands right now should be able to respond back to what Darcy Weir just said and say, well, actually X, Y, and Z, right? It's all about having the open dialogue, because that's all we can do in this within this field. All we can do is sit back and have dialogue, because it's something none of us understand. And once again, once you get back to those people that have the answers, quote unquote, they can sit here and tell you that this is what's going on. That's where another flag is raised. And you see that in the behavior of a Corey Good, or even, some of the other stories that you may have heard. Like the military is doing this with the extraterrestrials. They have a base and they're running these things. Like, where is that at? Where do you get that from? Where do you pull that from? You can't just have, if we're all trying to get to the answer, we can't have information that isn't true, first of all, clouding up the true things, right? We got to get rid of that stuff in order to see what the real data is, to try to understand how to get to the truth. Or else we'll be spinning wheels and telling stories forever until we have contact, wide open contact moment where we're able to verify and do these things with these extraterrestrials one to one. Then otherwise we'll just be telling stories. Aren't you tired of hearing stories? I know I am. I'm more about getting to the truth. That's my thing. I'm not really in this to hear stories, right? I want to know what happened to you. And I want to try to help move the needle on, let's now try to find some answers to this. And that's not just UFOs, that's everything to do with the phenomenon. Okay, let's take that data. Let's add that data to what we already have. Now, what if we look at all the data now? What conclusion can we come to now? Is there anything that we can get out of this? That's what I'm in this for. I'm not in this to simply hear stories. Yep, you're right on this, Gray Al. I'll say trust your spidey sense, but don't build your file on what other people are telling you. It will matter not for your own experience should you find yourself in the company of the strange. Problem with that is, Gray Al, is that not everyone is an experiencer. There are people in this community right now that have never had an experience. So they trust in you. They trust in you to be they are living vicariously through you. So they trust that your stories are truthful and accurate, because they have not had a sighting or an experience and may not ever have one within their lifetime. But they still are engaged in wanting answers and getting to the truth. So that's what I'm saying. Experiencers often forget that. They often forget that there are people still who have not had experiences and who are later in life and still to this day have not seen anything, experienced anything. And the only way that they can get the data or the information is not through an experience, obviously. It's through the things that you say, it's the things that you bring to the table for data. That's what it is. That's how you have to think through it, because otherwise we'll be spinning wheels forever. Great, Al. Good broadcast, Rob G. This does need to be aired in the community. If people are wanting general population to accept their story, etc. And not just that, just to know that, man, this is something that's happening. That's why in the show After Hours, like the phenomena is real. Like, we know that at the very least. We have enough data to show that the phenomena is real. Now it's about getting answers on how does that impact us, or what can we do with that data, with that information and knowledge. How can we take that now to the next step? Whatever that step is, you know what I mean? Um Yeah, I think I heard that, Hillbilly Herb. I think they were saying that Darcy's doc is going to be about Corey and Gaia. That's what they said in that soundbite there. I believe so. So yeah, that should be something coming out. Maggie M10, yeah, I get that feeling. Evidence or truth is ultimately an individual process. I suppose speculatively we'll get there in the so-called collective unconscious if enough people pursue the truth. Right. Let's just, like I said, let's just take out the sensational stuff and just go back to the basics. What do we have? What's in the data? What do we know? What do we know about the phenomena? What do we like I said, we know they're in the sky. We know they're coming from space. We've captured them doing that. We know they go underwater. We've captured them doing that. We know they come out the water. We've captured them doing that. There are things that we have that we can lean on that are pretty much facts as far as what it is that we're dealing with. And, once again, going back to the person that has never had that experience, when we talk about the truth, their own person's truth, and that's why when the personal disclosure thing for me doesn't hold water all the time because of that fact that there are some people who have not and never will have that personal experience. And the only way that they can feel that sensation or wrap their minds around what this is and try to also help get answers is by going to the data, and the data has to be pure. It can't be full of this fluff and sensationalism. It has to be pure data in order to get to those answers. So, and that's I think that's what I'll say about personal disclosure. We've talked about that before. Overlander BC. Some experiences are in a position to call BS or verify things based on what they know to be true, but at this stage of the game, what's the point when you get blocked for saying so? And I'm picking up what you're putting down, Overlander. I mean, you just have to just, keep doing what you do. If you feel like you're not doing anything wrong, if you're not disrespecting someone, if you're just, taking the data and verifying and vetting the data and calling out sensationalistic claims, I don't see anything wrong with that, man. Just as I said, keep doing what you're doing. As long as we're not hurting each other, disrespecting each other, I think everything else should be open for conversation. And that's truthfully, especially with this topic and where we're trying to go with this. Conversation at the very least should be had, regardless how you end up feeling about the conversation. Shouldn't be that important as to the more important thing, which is getting to the answers. So, all right, we're almost current here. That's a good point on spinning wheels, Mr. Rob. Definitely, Magnum 10. Appreciate you. Let's see. Let's see. And this is what, yeah, look at this gray owl. I hear you, Romeo Gamma. Sound good. Good was using tales to heroism to extract. And here's the thing, it bothers me. And we talked about this on the Skeptic versus Experiencer show that we also did on this channel maybe 2 months ago, where we talked about how because there are a group of extreme believers within ufology, then you have people who prey on those people. And that would be a Corey Good. That would be still some people active in this community right now that are taking advantage of the fact that there are a group of people within this community that will just believe and not question. And those people are what ends up being labeled as the UFO cult, right? That's what the skeptics, when the skeptics say UFO cult, they're talking about those extreme believers who are just susceptible to people like a Corey Good or to others that are just peddling BS in the sake of making money, right? And it is not benefiting those people not at all whatsoever, not leading them in any direction that leads them to the truth. It just leads them to making that person's pocketbook fatter, right? And so I like that comment. I like that comment. And that's exactly why those people need to be gone from this community. Gray Owl saying money. Okay, so that's part of the same thing. Let me see. I hear you, Romeo Gamma. Goods was using tales of heroism to extract money from people that is untoward activity, so he should take heat for that for sure. I've never felt like Sands was on the level, but I take him as less dangerous than But I hear you. Yeah, and I'm not really doing this to call out Sands. We're just reacting to Darcy Weir making some points about Sands, right? But with that being said, there's still opinion to be had and understanding on why taking that angle is okay. Because some people feel like, oh man, I shouldn't really criticize or I really shouldn't do anything. I should just let a person say what they're gonna say and never challenge it, right? And it's not 100% true. It's not 100% true. Magneticus. I always accept project funding, told prisoners not to. Okay. Sidebar. Maggie M10. Maybe once money, fame, attention, and truth are separated, how? No idea. We might not have so much embellishments. A lot of people really like to hear riveting and scary stories. And there's a place for that. There is a place for riveting and scary stories. It's just not in this field because this field is about getting to the truth. And you can't get to the truth with lies. You know what I mean? You can't get to the truth with lies. There is a whole area for scary stories and embellishments. It's called science fiction. It's called write a movie script. It's called that, and I go to the movie and watch fake things all the time, fake stories and things that aren't true. And I'm totally entertained by it, but it doesn't belong in this community where we're talking about the future of humanity, where humanity goes from here and needing the truth in order to determine how we could affect where humanity goes. That's the big thing here. So this is a no BS sort of field that we're in. It requires us to be 100% truthful and authentic in what it is that we're bringing to the table, because otherwise we're spending extra unneeded time washing away the stuff that is considered embellishment and sensationalism. And you only live so long in a lifetime, so you want to spend your life sifting through the BS to get to the truth, or would you like your data to be pure and authentic so that you have a better chance of using your time more wisely and getting to the truth potentially within your lifetime? That's the big part of it. Let me try to get current here. Might have to skip over a couple comments, but yeah, I agree with this, Overlander. There needs to be a grassroots open source experience or reporting space accessible to all so that patterns can be recognized and cataloged. Yes, as long as BS places like MUFON or gatekeepers who skew it are the keepers of the information were screwed. No, totally. I've said this a million times too. We need a place where, because us as just the citizens, humanity, experiencers, we have all the data truthfully, but it's all sporadically out there, right? If we had a big enough room where we could put all the authentic experiences in one room, you would see every aspect of the phenomenon and maybe parts that you haven't seen because you have to sift through so much BS. If we had a room where we could fit everybody in there and then take that data, we'd have the answer potentially, or we'd be a lot more further than we are with it being all spread around and sporadically placed. So great observation and comment. That is totally true. And Let me see. Yeah, Gray Al. This is some people can be fooled. Some people just have a great BS detector. The comment is we underestimate how we can tell when people are BSing. We just know. Yeah, yeah. You gotta have a great BS. That's what I'm saying. Those human abilities, the senses that we're born with, those are to be used to answer questions and to figure things out. That's how these animals don't go to any sort of academic, schooling. They have instinctual senses that help them out through life. That's the same thing that we have. We just think that academics are is the thing that's going to kind of supersedes common sense. I will never agree with that. I will never agree with that. Overlander BC, in my opinion, when someone speaks dishonesty or knowingly allows others to speak dishonesty in this community, that is more disrespectful than a swear word could ever be. Weaponized political correctness. Yeah, I mean, I see what you're saying there. I see what you're saying there, and I could definitely agree with some parts of that for sure. Overlander BC, I think it's if you can sniff it out, and if you're wanting to get the truth on what it is we're dealing with, then you should also help that process, right? So that's I understand what you're saying, and that's an easier way to put it, basically. Magneticus cult is just part of human culture. That's true. There's just a group of people, period, regardless, who are okay with following, and there are a group of people who are wanting to be leaders or lead, and it's just part of nature. It's just part of what it is. Maggie M10, thank you so much for that red heart. We do appreciate you. Let's see. I think we're current almost. Seems. Okay. Magneticus occult, occult sounds the same to me. Yeah, it kind of does. That's a great point out. Yeah, that's exactly. And Joanne, call it fiction and write a book. They don't understand that these are great. Like, dude, you're making up awesome stories that are suspenseful. And man, go write a book. Go write a book. Make some money. Call it science fiction, but just remove it from this community because this isn't where you're supposed to be, presenting that sort of information. This is for experiences that have happened to people, real authentic experiences. This is not for the latest book you're trying to write, or you should be writing. That's a great point out. Call it fiction, write a book. Let's keep the truth here and get rid of the fiction. Ah, Maggie and Tim, would it sell as well if it were marketed as fiction? It's a good point. It's a good point. Very competitive space, right? Great Al. If someone is trying to cash in on having a run in with X-rays, that is very, very upset because this is the last thing that one is thinking about subsequent to experiencing the contact. Right. Think about that. As traumatized as some people come back from experiences, how do those people feel about someone just not telling the truth? That has got to be the worst form of disrespect when it comes to this subject. Like this person is totally not telling, and not only that, but your story doesn't get to be heard on the stage that theirs does, right? Even though it doesn't really matter what level, but it if someone's wanting to put a spotlight on the community, they should be putting a spotlight on an authentic experience versus something that has been embellished, right? So I could see that could be upsetting to some for sure. Let's see. This comment I'll answer to you. Email me, Overlander. Email me, and we'll have an offline conversation. I see where you're going, but I won't make it part of the broadcast, right? Email me, mrrobg@gmail.com or booksocialshow@gmail.com. Either one. Email me, or you have the phone number, 856-843-3444. That's 856 the dig. If you're calling from outside the United States, put a 001 first, 856 433-444 or 001-856 the dig. Talk to me offline, Overlander. I get you though. I understand what you're saying, sir. Don't think that I'm not. But let's see. Earth Goat Trees. Let's see. What are Earth Goat Trees? Just tuned in. FYI, being a human lie detector can leave someone with absolutely no friends. I know from personal experience, LOL, but I'm good with that. Yeah. I mean, you gotta do it, man. It sounds there shouldn't be anything wrong with it, right? Like I said, you definitely would still want to respect people's feelings. I think that's first and foremost. You still definitely want to do that. But at the same time, you can't let BS just fly. You can't just let it fly, right? You still have to challenge. Let's see. I think we're almost current here. Ye- Maggie M10's like, oh no, Maggie M10 is like, why are they called X-rays of Grial? No worries. If it's too hard to explain in chat comment. I think it seems like Gray Owl uses these words to mean extraterrestrial and like Romeo Gamma instead of Rob G. So that's just Gray Owl's thing, Maggie M10. Once you read enough of the comments, you'll understand exactly what Gray Owl's talking about. All right, and I think we are current here. So guys, yeah, definitely great conversation to have. We have the tough conversations here. You know that. That's what we do here on this channel. Even if that means talking about, calling out things when you see something that doesn't make sense. At least questioning or asking questions. Yes, that should be something you should be able to do. And you should be able to get an answer to that. Yeah. Yeah, totally. I applaud once again Jason or Darcy Weir for taking a moment within. I'm sure he talked about a million other things in that interview, but this was the clip that I came across that was out there, and it happened to be about a subject we just went over a few weeks ago on this channel. So I said, "Oh, that would be cool to kind of talk about that," since we did do an entire show about whistleblowers and NDAs. And I think also at the same time, regardless if it's a Jason Sands, like I said, at the end of the day, does what Darcy Weir just said prove that Jason Sands is telling a lie? I don't think that it does. I don't think that it proves, but it does at least take you through an exercise of questioning, and maybe you take what he has uh, come out with and you go further with it, and maybe you figure some things out yourself. But I think in another part of that is I think we kind of give skeptics a really hard time, because when we do get a whistleblower to come out about UFOs, we give a skeptic a hard time because they do this to them. They take them through this vetting process. They question the things that they're saying. And a lot of people in the community say, hey, no, don't question him. Just go ahead with it. Just, hey, he's saying, why would he lie? Well, we understand that there's never 100% of anything. So if we have 100% of whistleblowers coming out, a portion of those whistleblowers are embellishing something. They have to be, because nothing's 100%. But are they all liars? No. And that's the differentiation I want to make. So I like skeptics challenging, but you can't put a blanket on every whistleblower and say that they're lying because it's something that you don't believe is happening, or you don't think is happening, or you haven't seen or experienced yourself, because there's data, true pure data here on our end that says otherwise. And if you're open-minded and you take a moment to kind of go through some of that data, I think you too can put together patterns, and you too will be able to at least be open to the understanding that what people are saying isn't just things they're saying, that there are actually things that are happening out here, and we don't know what it is. And we're all trying to figure it out. And I hope that you're doing the same. So, with that being said, I think it was a great show, guys. Just make sure you share it. If you missed the NDA and whistleblower show as well, make sure that you guys go ahead back and watch that. Or if you saw it, watch it again, because in addition to what we just talked about here, it'll put that show in a whole nother aspect and context for you. So with that being said, we got through a successful show tonight. I switched everything over like I said I was going to do. Tested it out last night. I was really enthused to go ahead and get in here. We got through a really long show without having a single issue. And yeah, so shout out to that. Shout out to you guys being patient through that process as well. Electronics and doing this stuff live over the internet, it's a crazy thing. And when it works great, it works great, right? Like it did tonight. And we'll have more shows like this. Also, with the setup that I have now, it will now allow me to go ahead and put together the other shows. So, guys, make sure that you stay on the lookout for the other shows that we have here on the channel. Also, social bits coming really soon, pre-recorded short form content. But with the system I have set up now, I can go ahead and create the Social Dig show. So we're going to run one of those. We're going to do a test run on one of those shows pretty soon here. So look out for the Social Dig show. Look out also for my experience with the phenomena. If any of you have an experience that you want to come on and talk about, go to booksocialshow@gmail.com. Send me an email there. You could be the first person on my experience with phenomena. I'll book you. We'll set it up. We'll do the show, and that'll be the first comeback show for my experience with the phenomena. Also, be on the lookout for the late night call-in show, because now I do have the phone and everything set up in here, so we're ready to go on that too. So we're ready to kick some butt now, especially now that we're getting through these flawless broadcasts, guys. It is going to be a ball. Let me see here. I want to make sure that we have seen everything here. Let's see. That's 7. That's 8. That's 9. Okay. All right, guys. It has been a pleasure. I want to thank you guys all for coming on out. You guys are just, man, you mean everything to the channel. Once again, I want to also say what's up to our members, because we do have memberships on this channel. You can help make this show better and help produce the show essentially by becoming a member. And want to shout out the members that we have currently listed, which is Ann Joanne, the Beekeeper, D. Nunley, Maggie M10, Flat 6, Miss Catherine Jones, Cosme Joe Chronicles, Wes W. Decker, Steel Pooh 69, Polly Rodderman, Lil Cam 51, Frankie B, Fast Timmy, and hopefully you, if you decide to go ahead and do that, it would all be appreciated and help make this thing go. We're going to go ahead and rock our t-shirt commercial, and then we're going to get up out of here, guys. Make sure you share this. Let's get this out there. And if you haven't already, please stop and hit the like button as well. And if you're lurking out there for the first time, please consider hitting that subscribe button, notification bell. We'd appreciate seeing you come back right here on the Definitive UFO News Show on the Social Dig. We do this for one thing and one thing only. We have these conversations for the positive progress of humanity. We want to make sure that each conversation that we have is one that moves us in a direction that we wouldn't otherwise be able to move in, except for the moment that we're in, this huge moment that humanity is facing, which is going to give us as human beings a chance to determine which way this goes for our descendants. So once again, positive progression in humanity. Love you guys. See you guys next time right here on the Definitive UFO News Show. Have a great rest of your day, guys. I'll be at Spaced Out Radio Friday, maybe taking Saturday off. I'll be there Sunday, though, as well, and then Monday. So until then, talk to you guys soon. May see me here before that. We'll see. Just hit the notification bell. You'll know. All right, guys. Welcome to the Social Shop, courtesy of the Social Dig. I am Mr. Rob G, and we are bringing you exclusive gear, and tonight's no different. We have Humanity t-shirts, the positive progression of humanity. Yes, you can go out into the world and proudly show everyone what humanity means to you. $32.99, and remember, if you're a social soldier, you get an additional 20% off the price. That's right. Being a social soldier gets you an additional 20% off. And keep in mind, depending where you are in the world, shipping fees and taxes will be applied. Bringing you exclusive gear right here at the Social Shop on the Social Dig.